Welcome back to Unirunner Video Drum Lessons for December 28, 2006. Glad you could tune in. Later on this podcast I'm going to be doing a drawing for a few items I've been talking about for the last couple months, including a couple of DVDs and sticks, so stay tuned for that. But for right now, I'd like to get to an email sent to me by Eric Brown. Eric says, I'm 36 years old and live in Florida. I've been downloading your podcast for several weeks now and enjoy watching you play. I've messed around on the drums on and off for a couple of years, but haven't really progressed at all. I know that 90% of this is lack of consistent practice due to work, family, etc. And the fact is that I become easily discouraged. I think some of this discouragement has to do with the fact that I never really got a good foundation in mastering the basics of technique and theory. Having said all that, it leads me to my main question. Do you recommend any instruction materials that would allow me to master the basics and go from there? Well, Eric, thanks for your email. One thing that I found within the last couple of years is this book that I've referred to before called Chops Busters. And what I like about this book is that no matter whether you've been playing a couple weeks or many years, there are things in here that you can practice regardless of your level and improve your skill. And it's just got a nice combination of simple and more complex exercises. So I like that. Of course, if you're not sure how to read music, and Eric didn't put that in there, whether or not he reads music, it might be good just to take a few lessons with a qualified drum instructor in your area. And remember, if you take drum instructions, doesn't mean you're going to be locked into that teacher. Check with them, make sure it's okay. Maybe you just want to check with a drum instructor. Just go sit in on one lesson and see if you like it, because you can skip around. See if that drum instructor is willing to work with you to meet the goals that you have. That's what I recommend when anyone asks me about drum instruction. I always ask them what their goals are, and then I either say, I can help you with that because I have experience in that area, or if I don't have experience in that area, I'll usually refer them on to someone that I know is more experienced depending on their goals. Let's just go back to Eric's email. He goes on, he says, I tend to have a perfectionist personality that wants to master everything before learning more. Well, logically, it's impossible to know everything. Not sure how I overcome that piece, but perhaps getting a strong foundation would give me confidence to explore. As much as I try to walk away and be content without knowing how to play, he says he always comes back to the drums, that is. He can describe it almost as a desperation to be able to sit down alone and truly jam. Thanks for reading this. Any advice or wisdom you can pass along regarding your experiences and obstacles would be appreciated. Thanks again, Eric. He talks about a desperation to be able to sit down and truly jam. I talked about before that in my opinion there is no bad technique. The only bad the only bad technique when you play is technique that doesn't allow you to express yourself. And I think when he talks about that desperation, a lot of musicians, including myself, experience that every once in a while, where we have something in our head or an emotion we want to convey, and unfortunately, due to our lack of technique, or chops, as they say, we're not able to express it. So that can lead to frustration. But fortunately, one of the great joys of drumming is to be able to learn, because it's always a progress. I mean, that's the joy of drumming for me, is that it's a journey where you can constantly learn things and improve yourself. Despite what's happened previously with you in your drumming career, there's always the future look too. It's always inspiring for me to see drummers who are drumming, into their 80s, 90s. That this is an activity that you can continue throughout your entire life. A lot of nursing homes have organs in them now. I wonder if in a few decades if we'll see more electronic drum kits set up in nursing homes alongside the organs, guitars, things like that. So Eric, you wanted me to talk about a couple obstacles or experiences I've had. I'll mention two obstacles that in my experience, and especially with this podcast over the last year, I've gotten a lot of emails that resonate with these couple of things I'll mention that a lot of people get hung up on as drummers. Number one, it's a place to play. A lot of people email me and say that they can't play in their apartment or in their house because they don't have a drum set maybe, or they just have a practice pad, or if they live in an apartment they're not able to obviously set up their drums in most cases. So that's something I've run into. A couple suggestions I have for that is, number one, buy a practice pad. You can play anywhere, and no matter how hard you beat a practice pad, unless your walls are really thin, if you live in an apartment, you probably won't be disturbing your neighbor. I have this practice pad, I'll show you. This is a Vic Firth practice pad. It's double-sided. This side is harder rubber, which makes a louder sound. This side is softer, which gives you more bounce, and you can't hear it quite as well. And with this harder side, there's not as much bounce, so you have to do more work with the stick. Another suggestion, if you can't play in your apartment or wherever you happen to be at, is maybe check with your employer. I used to work for a place that had a studio, and they let me, my band, play there as long as we took care of it and whatnot, cleaned up after ourselves. So check with your employer. Maybe you have some building or garage or something like that that you can use. Maybe your garage at your apartment you could play in. A lot of times that might not be feasible depending on how loud your band is. Also, if you're a member of a church, a lot of times churches will have their drums set up, and that might be a good way, if you're in a church band, to ask if you can come and practice on the off days, and that way you'll also have the opportunity to play the drums more than you might have before, and you'd also be serving and helping out your church, especially if you play in the band there. Obviously, electronic drums are a good option for many people that aren't able to set up acoustic drums. For a long time I had my acoustic drums at my apartment, and I could only play them when we set up to practice for a band, and so that was kind of frustrating. So for many years I didn't get to practice as much as I would have liked. Even just playing my bongos that I have in my apartment, I would get someone hammering on the roof of my apartment telling me to be quiet. So that's the first obstacle I wanted to mention, is not having a place to play or not having a place to practice. No matter where you're at, you could always break out a pillow. And a lot of great drummers started out practicing on pillows. And pillows are actually an excellent way to practice, because you don't get any bounce off the pillow. And you're going to have to do more work with your hands, and it's going to build up your muscles in your hands quite well, actually. Second obstacle I wanted to mention has to do with I think something a lot of us tend to fall into is comparing ourselves with other drummers. And that can kind of work in two ways a lot of times. Like if I go see a great drummer, lots of times I'll really be inspired. The first things I want to do after I get out of there is go home and play the drums. Other times it might work the opposite way, where you see a drummer and maybe they've been playing the same amount of time as you, and you look at them and you're wondering how in the world they can play so well and you play so poorly because you've been playing the same amount of time. Well, I think that's something we can really get caught up on, is comparing ourselves to others. It's really a downfall that musicians can fall into when developing, because instead of being inspired by others, they might be disappointed in their lack of progress or inability to play like this other musician. But I would say that when we look to other musicians, we should try not to compare ourselves to each other, because each person is going to offer something unique. I mean, I'm surprised by emails that I've gotten from great drummers, professional drummers, who mentioned something simple or something that I thought was simple that maybe they hadn't practiced quite as much, or they said that I did pretty well, that they were inspired by. And so that's pretty amazing. So I think if you look at yourself and your own drumming, you're always going to have something to offer, regardless how well your technique is developed. That's a great thing about music. Everyone has something to offer. Maybe you do a certain beat just a certain way that when you play it, others are inspired by that. So I have felt in the past, when I've seen great drummers, I'm like, what am I doing? I mean, there's no way I can ever play like that person. But then I think, why am I drumming in the first place? It's because it allows me to express emotion, and it's, great stress relief, and allows you to bond with other musicians and other people. And so I look to those things, and that music, for some people, they describe it as music, especially when you reach that point of inspiration, that music already existed, before you even played it. Maybe this beat existed somewhere, before you even played it. So just capturing things like that is inspiring enough for me to keep going. And I think for a lot of people, they can relate to that.
Okay, thanks to everyone who entered the Darren's Favorite Things contest over the last couple of months. I'll now do the drawing for the John Blackwell DVD set. Steve Smith DVD set, 4 pairs of drumsticks, and the book from Hamar Percussion Publications. All you had to do was enter in this contest was to take a PodTrack survey. So I've got the list of people who emailed me that they took this survey, and there's 101 people here. So what I'll do is go to random.org. I want to generate one number, the smallest value 1, largest value 101. Hit get numbers, and it gives me 71. So I'll go back to my box here where I've got everyone's email. I'll arrow down 71. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71. Stephen Hayden, congratulations. I will get in touch with you and be sure to ship these items out to you. Thanks again to everyone who took that PodTrack survey, and I'll continue to have that survey on the website. So if you have some time and want to enter in your comments about the podcast, feel free to do that. Until next time, keep practicing. Take care, and God bless.